Sure. So, I think you can look at this. There's several factors to everything. It's never just one clear cut thing. And so the way I like to see it is, first of all, that the open interest is just almost like you think of pressure, and so that pressure has to get released at some point. So we had this large buildup of pressure over the last month and a half. In combination with that, we had a lot of institutional flows that kind of slowed down, and part of that I think is just because it's the end of the year. We have these funds that are sitting on massive unrealized gains. And then we've had all this macro uncertainty, whether it be, talking about the Fed raising rates, as well as, I can't pronounce the Omicron or whatever COVID variant that they, whatever, that I think these kinds of things, or especially the COVID variant news, I think it was kind of just, an excuse for some of these funds to take profit, because they're sitting on these large, unrealized gains. So they're saying, hey, look, we don't want to, lose these unrealized gains we have. Let's just go ahead and lock this in for the year, right? Because funds are based on this yearly basis. And so, I think you're starting to see some of that. And you could also kind of technically make an argument that you'll see those flows reverse heading into the new year, because it's new year, willing to take on risk. But you also have to consider everything going on with macro. So pulling that aside, it's a whole nother discussion. But I think that those things kind of played a part in terms of, we've seen a lack of kind of spot bid. Meanwhile, you had, as we've talked about, the derivatives market positioned for more upside really aggressively. And so you kind of have this underlying, likelihood, for some kind of move like this. And then Friday night, the reason why it happened Friday night, usually you see like, Elon tweeting like some sustainability FUD or some kind of news driven event that really, gives price the juice to really flush down and start triggering that cascade of liquidations. What actually happened was just the fact that the books were really, really thin. And so if you're watching the order books, this is something that I don't pay attention to extremely heavily, but, I am in different group chats or talk to different people who, really pay attention to this kind of thing. And so, I got several messages saying, hey, look, the liquidity is really drying up. The bid ask spread is widening. The books are just getting really thin. And so essentially what this means is, on the order book, you have, bids and asks, which are essentially orders saying, I'm not willing to, buy or sell, interact with the current market price, but, I'll be a willing seller at, X price, or I'll be a willing buyer at X price below. And that's what I deem fair value for Bitcoin, or where I'd be interested in starting to average in a position.
Got it.
We saw all those bids and asks almost completely disappear leading up to this event. So it was actually the least amount of liquidity since the move before May. And so what that meant is that if you were coming in looking to trigger some kind of move like this, it's very easy for you to kind of, trigger this kind of cascading effect. I think it was like 8,000 Bitcoin really kind of triggered this move. Which, usually isn't a whole lot for, the overall, Bitcoin market, and it can usually absorb that really well. But because there was such a lack of, orders in the books, that, as soon as we saw those spot orders hitting the market, then that really kind of moved the price down and started to trigger that cascading effect. And so like, I know this is kind of a meme that like, oh, whales manipulate the market and whatever, whether you want to call it manipulation or whatever. I think this was honestly a planned event. I think, someone was looking at this and said, hey, the books are really thin. We've got all this OI to flush out. We've been in a regime of positive funding. Long short ratios are at all-time highs. Let's go ahead and just trigger this thing, right? Somebody's got to do. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. You could easily go short, trigger the cascade, and then, cash in big on some kind of move like this. And so, I definitely think this was an orchestrated thing, in the sense that, someone saw an opportunity and took the opportunity. But at the same time, I don't think it's something like you should be outraged because whales are manipulating the market. I mean, this is just an opportunity that was there, in the same way that, you see a lot of shorts building up. And, I think the kind of people that are saying like, oh, this is manipulation, would be the same people not to complain if you saw, a large short, liquidation event because, some whale saw that it was advantageous to trigger shorts. It's just that was the setup that was there at the time. And I think someone just took advantage of that.